Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great recordings you've never heard of, or you've probably never heard of. This, as I said before, is a series mostly for beginners who may not be aware of the fact that the classical music world contains so much more. I mean, you see all these CDs out there, right? And you know that everyone's doing the same things, but they're also doing other things. And this is a talk primarily about either those other things or unusual and interesting recordings of those same things. Today we're talking about other things. And in this case, the fabulous symphonies of Swedish composer Franz Berwald. Now, Berwald lived from 1796 to 1868, a very interesting period. I mean, he was contemporary with Beethoven for a good bit of his early maturity, and by the time he died, he was out there with Wagner and Tchaikovsky and those people. He wrote 4 symphonies, 3 of which are real, and one of which was a reconstruction of a piece that was orchestrated by other hands, and we don't really need to worry about that one. But the bottom line is that he was from Sweden and spent most of his life, he actually was a doctor too. I think he was a foot doctor or something like that. Then he grew mushrooms. He had a whole bunch of careers. He worked in Berlin and operated a clinic there for many years. Really an interesting character. His music is quite distinctive given the period in which he worked. His 3rd symphony, and this is the one we're really talking about, the Singulière, is called Singulière, singular, and it is. It's one of the great early Romantic symphonies. If you like Mendelssohn, for example, his Italian symphony, or Schumann, the Spring Symphony, you really need to hear Berwald's 3rd, the Singulière, because it is a fascinating and beautiful work. It's very interesting in the way it's put together. It has 3 movements, and the slow movement has the scherzo, the dance movement, in the middle as its middle section, and then it comes back to these beautiful slow movement, and it has a finale, which has like a really powerful opening theme, and that returns to the beautiful lyrical theme of the slow movement before piling on to the end. And this recording is really the best of the batch. It's on the BIS label, and it features the Malmö Symphony Orchestra of Sweden, the hometown team, conducted by Sixten Ehrling. Now, Sixten Ehrling was also a conductor who had a very, very high reputation as an artist. He conducted the Detroit Symphony before Antal Dorati got there. And he had, let's just say he was kind of grumpy. He used to scream and yell and carry on and get hysterical and whatnot. And so for that reason, his career might not have been quite as widespread as it should have been, and he might not have gotten the most prestigious appointments. He spent most of it after Detroit in Scandinavia, in and around Scandinavia. He didn't make an enormous number of recordings. His discography is quite select, but this is one of the best things he ever did. And this is certainly the best complete cycle of all of the Berwald symphonies. Now, aside from the Singulière, most of them have nicknames. Symphony number 4 is just at E flat. Oh, well. Symphony number 1 is in G minor. It's very pretty. Symphony number 2 is the Capricieuse. And the Capricieuse is the one that was sort of assembled later by other people, if I'm not mistaken. At least I think that's what happened to it. And this disc also contains his Konzertstück for bassoon and orchestra, a little concert piece for bassoon and orchestra, which is delightful. He also was remarkably creative and imaginative. He was one of the inventors of the symphonic poem. He was doing it even before Liszt was. There's a whole series of symphonic poems that he wrote that are, Elfenspiel, little elves zipping around. And there's one called Racing, and some other things like that. And he wrote a couple of big operas. There's all kinds of music by him. But I really think this is a set that's very easy for people. It's very easy for people to forget about, because Berwald's not a household word. His chamber works are also very attractive. He was a good composer. Don't get me wrong. Just many, many different media. But he just never made it into the big leagues. perhaps because he didn't write enough, perhaps because he was based in Sweden. And for whatever reason, this Swiss label took it upon itself to make sure that all four symphonies were documented in the most powerful and captivating way in gorgeous, gorgeous sonics. And I never see these performances talked about. People tend not to notice them. Generally speaking, Berwald is one of those, once in a while somebody takes a glance at him and everybody listens to it and goes, oh, gee, this is really nice. It's really good music. And then they forget about him again. And that's the end. And maybe he is a one-shot wonder. There's nothing wrong with being a one-shot wonder. I mean, if you want to get into him more deeply, then absolutely go ahead. Explore, get this 2-disc set, listen to all four symphonies. But at a minimum, if you're downloading particularly, download his Symphony No. 3, the Symphony Singulière, and listen to it, because there is nothing quite like it by anybody else in the period. It was composed in 1845, and he doesn't sound like Schumann, and he doesn't sound like Mendelssohn. He has a distinctly Nordic Scandinavian feel, and by that we usually mean a characterful treatment of woodwind instruments, with lots of attractive orchestration for that section of the orchestra. And that's what you get. And tunes that are really memorable, really interestingly memorable, and simple, almost naive in some respects, but really smart, interesting guy. What more can I say? Except listen. You have to go listen to it. I've made videos about these symphonies. You can go and take a look. I've talked about them before. I've talked about this set before. And I just feel that it really makes sense to give it another push, to hope that people start to pay attention to really one of the most interesting and attractive symphonists of the first half of the 19th century. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.